Abby and Glennon. Glennon and Abby, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dan. We're delighted to be here.
We love you. So we're just grateful you keep asking us to come back.
The feeling is mutual. I'm always happy to have you on. I've never had you on as a couple, only solo. So it's really nice to talk to you in this format. Let me ask about this new project. From what I can gather, it was really born out of a lot of, to be frank about it, suffering and struggle. Am I understanding this correctly?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it started during a period where the three of us, Abby, me, and my sister, who all do life together and also do our podcast together. I had an anorexia diagnosis. Abby lost her brother unexpectedly, and my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer all in the same 6 months. So during that time, we kind of all panicked. We'd never been, you have those people who kind of show up for you and you take turns freaking out. But we were all just really spinning at the same time. And so we started collecting little glimmers of wisdom for each other. And then that sort of turned into this exploration of collecting glimmers of wisdom in all these different categories. So it was out of a place of lostness, I would say.
It's been a hell of a couple of years for the three of us collectively. And because we work so closely together on the podcast and we do life together, obviously Glennon and I are married, but usually one person is usually not going through trauma or a really tough time to kind of hold and steady the boat. And we just didn't have that. We were just kind of all flailing a little bit. And our podcast is a place where we talk to the wisest and most brilliant people that we can think of and find in the world, our teachers, really. And the conversations that we've had, not just on the podcast, but in our real lives, we started sending these little snippets to each other as a pathway forward. And that's kind of what was the precipice and the beginning of us actually thinking about and creating this book.
Yeah, it was like we needed to externalize the hope. We couldn't save ourselves in those moments, and which is ironic because most of my life's work has been about it doesn't have to be out there, it's inside of you. And during this time, it was not inside of me. So it was a way of externalizing and finding a place where we could go to remember what we knew. That turned into this.
I just want to pick up on that word remember, because you said something, you write something, Glennon, in the introduction that really landed with me as somebody who's, we're all in the same line of work. We're all, let's call it personal growth or self-help or whatever you want to call it. Neither of those terms is perfect, but there's a way in which people who don't do what we do might expect that we have our shit together in a holistic way, but we don't, at least none of us on this call do, none of this in this conversation do. And we need to be reminded, even when we've written whole books, in your case, 4. And I really resonated with that, because sometimes I've gone back and because I've had to write a new foreword for an old book I wrote or something like that, and remembered, oh yeah, I'm not even practicing this thing anymore. And it sounds like that happened to you.
It is all that happens to me. I mean, it's the only thing that happens to me. Sometimes one thing will, when, especially during this time, and I'm going to explain it to you, and then I'm going to try to explain what I think might actually be happening in my brain during this. But during this time, I was so disconnected from my own wisdom. We would be in grocery lines and somebody would come up to me and say, oh my God, I read your book and you really helped me through this time. And it was all I could do to say, is there anything you can remember that I said that you could tell me back that might help me? And Abby and I always laugh about this as my Dory from Nemo phenomenon, where every day I just wake up and I forget everything. I'm just brand new here. And I've called it beginner's mind forever because I've wanted to put a positive spin on it. And I do think that there are positive spins to be put on it. I think some of the ways I see the world are because there's some freshness involved. But the more I think about what's actually happening is I think it's possible that the worse things get or the harder my life is, the harder it is for me to connect to what I know. And so I wonder if it's anxiety does create a bit of dissociation. Like, I think it might be a mini dissociation that happens over and over again, that when we are going through a hard time, when we need wisdom the most, when we need to remember, I've been here before, I am not new on this planet, I have walked this path, and I have wisdom to lean on, that's when it's hardest to access. I think it's because when things get hard, we go. I don't know where we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, I mean, I can speak for myself. When I lost my brother over a year ago, these hard times that all of us kind of go through, weird seasons of all of our lives, to me, I always get to the fact that, like, these are the great humblings for myself, like the great moments of humility. But it takes me a while to figure out how to get there, because for so many months and weeks and for almost even a year, I found myself even though I had never really traveled the road of grief, I do remember feeling similar ways of despondence and questioning and total and utter confusion about mortality and what it means to me and how this now affects my whole family. But it takes some time to get from the bathroom floor or whatever crisis you're going through to this mindset of, oh, this is a great humbling. This is a moment. And that remembering, it's like, how is it? Where are we going when we forget every day about the things that we've learned? I don't know. It
is a humbling.
Can you write a book about that or something?
I probably did already.
Well, here are a couple of things I think I know. First, trauma does lead to dissociation. I'm not a clinician and not a mental health expert, so whatever, all the caveats issued. But I do think that makes sense. And then what I definitely do know is that when you're in a state of stress or anxiety, the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, is firing, and definitionally, when that's firing, the rational part can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes complete sense that you could have done a lot of learning and a lot of teaching, both of you, and then you hit a speed bump. And based on what we know about how the brain operates, you forget all the shit you learned and taught, and you need to be reminded. And usually it's the people in your life who are closest to you who can help you. But as it turns out, for the three of you, you were all on red alert at the same time.
Yeah.
It makes really good sense now.
It really does. And it's infuriating. Like, and the problem is this is happening on a minute to minute, day to day basis, because so many of us are riddled with confusion and anxiety. And there may not be a rock bottom that you've actually hit, but like our country's kind of going through one, and that's scary. So of course our rational minds can't get online for a long period of time for us to actually understand what it is, in fact, we're going on. So nobody remembers anything. Everything feels like it's elusive or out there. And I think that that's why this project and this book is so, at least for me, like we wrote this for ourselves.
It's so true.
So that we have a place that we can go to remember all of the shit that we've learned that we just keep forgetting day in and day out.
What's interesting is that you've centered it around 20 questions, and you've kind of landed on this idea that these are really the 20 questions. And I'm curious, like, how did you get to that number? How do you derive the confidence that you're covering all the bases?
Oh, for sure we're not covering all the bases.
This was our best attempt.
Didn't we just tell you? We were traumatized, Dan. At 20, we got exhausted. And somebody said, I feel like people like the number 20.
Yeah. Well,
so let's go with 20.
Yeah.
Who the hell knows? All we ever know is what we swirl around all day. Then our entire lives and podcasts are about, is it possible that you also swirl around these questions? Over time, it felt like, holy shit, I think that the fact that we go through these 20 questions every single day over and over again is maybe not a personal problem. Like, it might just be one of the states of being for human beings. So it felt like to us, after doing this for, I don't know, 20 years, we felt pretty confident that most of the people we talk to in our lives or on our pod in one way or another, ask themselves these questions each day. There's probably 20 more. There's probably 100 more. I have no idea.
1 million more.
Yeah.
We really did try to get to the root of a lot of questions, in the conversations that we've had, not even in the last year, but in the past 4 or 5 years. Like, what are the things that are we all asking each other? And then there's like these questions deeper.
Yeah.
These questions deeper. And we really tried to get to the deepest question of what we're all kind of swirling around.
Yeah, because Abby, like there's a chapter on grief. So what happens when you are in grief? I mean, you could call that chapter grief, but it felt like to me, being Abby's partner, walking through the days and moments with her after losing her brother, it just felt like her whole being was looking at me each day and saying, how do I go on? It didn't feel like a category. Yeah. It felt like a desperate question. When I got my anorexia diagnosis after dealing with freaking eating disorders for 35 years now, the question, I mean, you could call it eating disorder, but like really the question is, how do I make peace with my body? And people come from that to that with a million different ways. It has nothing to do with anorexia for a lot of people. It's still a question that you ask yourself in a different way, maybe every decade. So I don't know. I guess I'm just more of a question person than an answers, but that felt right to me as a philosophy that really we kind of seem to all just be spinning around the same questions over and over again for our whole lives.
I buy it. So if you're cool with it, you got one customer.
Good enough for us.
If you're cool with it, in whatever time remains for us, I would love to just talk about some of these questions.
Let's do it.
You brought up the question that you, Glennon, felt Abby was asking you either explicitly or implicitly in the wake of the loss of her brother, which is how do I go on? So Abby, maybe I'll start with you. What does that question mean to you? And I know we're not big into like concrete answers here, but like where have you landed with regard to this question?
Good question, Dan. I've been through a process of getting into really deep therapy. Ironically, about a year prior to my brother's death, we had a woman on our podcast. Her name is Suzanne Stabile, and she came to talk to us about the Enneagram. And I'm a number 7 on the Enneagram. What she said in the podcast kind of changed my life because, yes, I'd been in and out of therapy throughout my life. But she said, I bet that you, because an Enneagram and a number 7 on an Enneagram is an enthusiast. I'm just like super optimistic and positive, and I want to have fun doing things. She just said, I wonder, have you ever worked on your shadow side? And I thought, no, I for sure haven't.
Not planning on it.
That sounds like a bad time, not a fun time. It got me thinking, like, what's that? What is that about? What am I avoiding here? I'm not accessing half of myself. And so I was in kind of real deep therapy around this idea of my shadow side and what that means to me and what I'm afraid of, and really getting honest with myself about it. And then my brother passes away, in rolls the train of grief. And by the way, I'm sober now for 9 years, and nothing like this had happened to me within this 9 years of sobriety. Nothing that was going to bring me to my knees like losing my brother did. And in with this train of grief came all of the unprocessed grief that I had ever incurred in my whole life as an adult person, especially when I was using alcohol and drugs. This train was heavy. This train had many cars to it, and I have had to spend quite a lot of time dealing with, I think my overall biggest fear is death. And the truth is, the way that he died, he had a heart attack. He died in his sleep. And I was really searching for the justice of it. And it was something that I felt like a relationship with. Like, I'm going to figure out what happened to him, why it happened. This links with the going on question because I have now understood that we don't know anything. We do not know. The medical examiner's report says it was a heart attack. And then you go down the line of the why of the heart attack. Was this genetic and or was it his health and was it his diet? And, is there something he could have done? And none of that actually matters. And all of the going on-ness of my life lies in acceptance of what is. Mm. I don't like that answer. I really, really, really don't like that answer, because that forces me to accept what is in every moment, and every present moment requires of me presence. And that is a hard thing. That is a hard thing in our culture. That is a hard thing as a person, to maintain a present focus on what is in this moment. Especially as a parent, we have responsibilities. You have to be thinking about the future for their wellness and their health and all of the things. But in terms of the going on of it all, there's nothing I can do to bring him back. There's nothing I can explain factually as to why exactly he died. I have no idea where he went, or if he went somewhere, which is a big question to me. Ironically, I think that we give ourselves these symbols in life so that we can go on. And I land in, and I'll be quiet in a second, but
don't. I love this so much.
Yeah,
and
I land in this real need to have structure. Structure makes me feel safe. And I think that this is why I've been so anti-religiousness for a lot of my life. And because it's so faith-driven rather than structure. But I remember sitting in the church at his funeral, feeling so grateful to have this space of possibility, that there was maybe not the definitive answer that I've walked with throughout my life in terms of being a little agnostic and atheist. So this is a long way of saying accepting never knowing anything is where I try to get to every day. Pretending to know things is usually where I live a lot of my day. And the balance and the tension between those two things is, in fact, I think, kind of the human suffering struggle that we all go through. I don't know if that answers anything. Or...
So beautiful.
What did I say? See, I forgot everything.
Good things. I might actually listen to it.
You did say a million good things in there, and one of the things I was thinking about as I was listening is that we do so much scrambling in our lives to protect ourselves against entropy, impermanence, uncertainty, groundlessness. And so certainty, telling ourselves some neat and tidy story, is one way to do it. But, structure is another. And I do it too. I create a lot of structure to, as a bulwark against insanity. But, at some point, I'm going to lose that too, because the body's not going to function as well. And I'll be lying in a bed, maybe in a hospice, or so. There's more letting go to be done all the time. And I know that's a gigantic pain in the ass, but it appears to be true.
The setup is a little bit tough. All of this whole humaning Earth School thing.
Yes, and then there's a lot of awesome shit too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, one of the central promises of the Dharma or Buddhism is that there's a pleasure in the equanimity of letting go and allowing things to unfold without frantically trying to control the universe all the time.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that does sound
Every time I read a book about Buddhism, or I hear somebody give a specific vibe of it, I'm like, that's right.
Yeah, same.
That feels correct.
Yes. It's funny because as somebody who, is trying to drink from the fire hose of the Dharma as much as possible, it's like the whole deal is rubbing your nose in the hardest of hard truths like death and decay and, the unreliability of things that are pleasurable. The Buddha likened, chasing pleasure to licking honey off of the edge of a razor. And so this is just like nothing but bad news. And yet when you hear it, it somehow relaxes the nervous system. It's like, oh, well, this is the truth, and it's easier to take it on than it is to live in constant denial in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's I think what I've always gone for is that there's some way to be safe.
Right.
Which goes to everything I've ever involved myself in, every fundamentalist religion, every eating disorder, every form of rigid thinking. I'm constantly we call me cult susceptible. Just somebody tell me what it is. And the only problem with that is it goes against the very fundamental, it goes against what life is. So that's the only problem.
Yeah.
I guess there's a different version that it's not safety, but it is kind of a wild peace. There's a peace that comes from admitting that there's no safety and then stopping the frantic search for that. There is I'm thinking of this line to this song that I listen to almost every morning. Abby's probably really sick of this song, but there's this song by Florence and the Machine called Free. And she's talking about just spinning in the unknowing. And she says, is this how it's been? Is this how it's always been? To exist in the face of suffering and death and somehow still keep singing. That's what I want. I want to admit that there's no safety and just swirl and spin and live amongst other people who are not holding tight, but who are also swirling and spinning and living. There's a peace in that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience, it only happens in moments, and
yes.
takes a lot of work and practice, and then you fuck it up and, get a relapse of whatever prior addiction you might have had, and then you clean that up and you spin in the wild peace for a second, and then you fuck it up again. And as far as I can see, short of enlightenment, that's the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did anybody see we can't talk about White Lotus. Never mind.
No, yeah, go for it.
Oh, we can?
Yeah,
okay. So
talking about enlightenment straight to White Lotus, that was where Glennon's brain's at.
Because I feel like there was a moment of enlightenment in the final episode, which was
Spoiler
Carrie
alert.
Coon at the table,
yes.
sitting she's suffering so much. I related to her so much because she's just trying to figure out, am I doing this right? Why am I doing this wrong? Why does everything seem so hard? Why can't I fake it like they are? Her two friends, they faked it so much. They were holding on to this idea of security or presenting everything shiny as being the answer. But she looked at her two friends and she said, I'm happy you have a beautiful face. I'm happy you have a beautiful life. And I'm just grateful to be at the table. And I just could cry talking about it because I just felt oh, that's enlightenment. I'm not grasping at what you have. I'm not grasping at what you have. I'm also not pretending that it doesn't drive me batshit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just grateful to be at the table, regardless of whether I'm the best one or the most beautiful one or the smartest one. Or that's the only character that had any enlightenment in the whole thing, which was a series about West versus East, desire versus contentment, I guess.
I totally agree with you. I loved it. I know it was a controversial season for some people, but I loved it. And in particular, I think that scene where Carrie Coon, who's in part of three women who are on vacation together, and their kind of passive aggressive cattiness that plays out over the course of the season, and they're fighting. Sometimes it's straight up aggressive cattiness, and she has this breakthrough moment that you just described where she drops the mask. She's totally real. She's not pretending that she's not sad or annoyed, and she's in love with her friends, and in a really healthy way. And so that's kind of the punchline. We're in this fucked up bus. We don't know how we got here. We don't know when it goes off a cliff for each of us. So you might as well be pretty tight with the other people on the bus.
And you might as well stop searching for things to give meaning. The other thing she said was, she gave a speech that was very like closer to fine Indigo Girls vibes. Like, I've been to the mountain, she's tried to find meaning everywhere. And she said, I think I can stop looking for meaning because time is what gives my life meaning.
Oh, that was good.
Meaning, I don't have to force the meaning. All I have to do is be present at this table. And over time, there's some other force that's going to decide what all this means, which is sort of a beautiful thing to surrender to.
I didn't know what to make of that part of it, so I construed it the way I wanted to construe it, which was that you don't have to search for sort of esoteric or metaphysical meaning when love is the answer. And by love, I don't mean just like romantic love. I mean like having positive relationships on every level of your life.
Yeah.
That is if you go into an LLM, a large language model, AI, and ask what's the punchline of all spiritual traditions since the dawn of time, it will give you the one word answer of love. And that appeared to me to be what she was landing on. But maybe that's just because I didn't understand fully what she was talking about when she talks about time.
Well, it was interesting, though, that she used the word time because she could have used the word love. What I liked about her using the word time is we kind of all determine what love means. Love means nothing. I mean, this side says love is this. We say love is this. Like, you have to bring your own dogma, your own belief to the word love, and you can make it whatever it is. But time is the thing that we have no say in. So it just makes me feel like that was her way of turning it over in a way that she couldn't manipulate in her mind. Somebody else is in charge of time.
Fair enough. Yes, that is an impersonal, unstoppable force that you have no choice but to surrender to.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go to another question, which you open the book with. And Glennon, you write about this. Well, you both write about this. And this is a question my wife has asked me a lot about me, but you're asking about it yourselves. Why am I like this? Yeah, so those conversations are less fun than the one we're about to have. Glennon, I'll start with you. Like, why that question, and what comes to mind when you pose it?
Well, I thought if I talked about White Lotus enough, we could avoid this.
No.
I think that is for sure the question that I ask myself the most all day, every day. It is very comforting to me. I think the most helpful thing maybe in learning what I've learned throughout the million interviews we've done with brilliant thinkers and therapists and people on our podcast is that there are actually some answers to that one. Why am I like this? You can't answer it all. But in terms of, really understanding attachment theory or all the different things we kind of go through in the book, it's like one version of this is when I'm still going through this most recent bout of eating disorder recovery. It felt to me like the closer I got to health, to claiming that maybe I wasn't broken and sort of acting that way, acting with more health and peace and power, which is interesting. I think I could only do because we were both doing the same work at the same time. So that we were polarized, which happens in close relationships, right? Like, I was the sad, artistic shadow. And because I lived there, Abby constantly had to be such a toxic positivity son because we were playing different roles. When Abby started stepping into her shadow side, you know how when one person doesn't worry, they keep saying to the other person, stop worrying. Why are you worrying? And that makes the other person feel like they have to worry more because, well, if nobody's going to worry, then I have to double down. We were constantly doubling down. And when I began to consider, what if I wasn't born broken? Because that's what I've been saying. In my first memoir, I said, I was born broken. That is what I believed about myself because I've struggled with mental health since I was 10. But this interesting thing happened, which is as my therapy insisted that I stopped landing there and asked more questions, like, is it true that anyone's born broken? How could that be true? That forced me to look at my whole family dynamic, because one of the reasons why we are who we are, why am I like this, is because of the family roles we were given. That's just one. and in the book, there's probably 10 ways to look at why are we like this. One role, like for me, there was a lot of unhealth in my family dynamic. There was a lot of beauty too, but there was a lot of unhealed trauma, unhealth. We were not a family who could admit that or look at that. And so what happened is that I became the sick one. So that and this happens in many families, there's a designated patient. Sometimes it's called a scapegoat, but it's the person who embodies in their self all of the unhealth of the family. And that serves a real purpose for the family because now it's not in either of the parents. Now it's not something we need to talk about as a family dynamic. It's just all in one person. And now we know more. We bring whole families into therapy. We understand that. But when I was young, that was not. It was, you send her away. She's broken. And that was the family storyline. My little sister became the hero, which happens often when a younger sibling has an older sibling who's sick, right? Okay, so she's messed up. So now my role in the family is to prove that we're okay and we're good and that she doesn't speak for us. And so my sister became perfect, which is, I think, even worse, harder to recover from than being the sick one. I really feel like when you figure out what your family role was or is, you realize why you're just playing a role all the time. Like that wasn't all of who I was. Why didn't I feel like I could be a full human? There's like this kind of hero's journey you can go on to step out of that role. But it's very tricky because it messes with the whole family's dynamic. Because when you stop playing your role, nobody knows their lines anymore. Mm. And I actually had just as another Nemo reference that just came into my mind. You know that scene in Nemo where they like go out of the anemone and then back in, go out and back in because it looks like danger outside the anemone. That's what I felt like because I kept poking my head out like, what if I'm not broken? What if I'm okay? What if this whole family has some things to talk about? And then everything would scare me because everybody would start acting crazy because I was challenging everybody. So then I'd step back in and act sick again. It was so weird. I think I'm at the point now where I'm not going to go back into the anemone, but I will still say that it's still scary out there in terms of my family. Nobody's rearranged. Nobody knows what to do with it. There's a lot of outer conflict instead of me just keeping the conflict internal.
Let me ask a supplemental question, and maybe it's on your list. If we're starting with a foundational question of why am I like this, is it possible to be some other way?
Not yet. But well, first of all, I think there's hope. I think I feel a little bit different than I was at the beginning of recovery. But I found a loophole in terms of I'm really interested in passing on less of this shit to my kids than I got, which I find extremely stressful because I don't know about you, but I don't like the system where I can know better in my mind and my heart, but my body still does the old programmed things like I'm a very judgmental person. I keep myself safe from other people that scare me by judging them. Mm-hmm. And my kids notice that about me and I cannot seem to stop, even though I'm trying really hard. It's like trying to turn a boat like 2 degrees left. Like it's just so hard. So sometimes I jump back into it. And I think it hurts my kids. I think it's like putting a dirty lens over their eyes. That's my lens and not theirs. So we found kind of what we're leaning on right now. We took our youngest out, who we noticed was noticing my judging and was making her sad. I saw it happen at the dinner table. And we took her out to dinner and I said, okay, so here's the thing. I'm scared of people. And I do this thing when I get scared that people are getting too close, which is that I list a bunch of things that's wrong with them. Mm. It's the same thing as my anorexia. It's what I do with food. It's like I have a few safe foods and scared of everything. A few safe people, scared of everyone else. So when you see mom doing that thing where I'm at a table and I start telling you all the reasons why someone's bad, I don't want you to look at the person I'm talking about. It has nothing to do with them. Okay? I just want you to look at mom, look at me and think, oh, my mom's scared. She's doing that thing again. She said, well, she did not look surprised. Okay. I was not giving her any new information. She knew that I did this. She said, it's really hard though, because you're so smart. Mm. And I do And I do feel like you know a lot of things. And I said, I do know a lot of things. You might have some really smart people in your life and you still have to, the only person who knows is you. So use me as a practice. But I don't want you to have my lens. You have a clearer lens. I want you to trust. I want you to make big mistakes with people because you trusted them. I want you to live more open-heartedly and clearer than I do. So don't put my lens on. See me through yours. So can we change? I don't know, but like, I'm not less judgmental, but at least I can tell people how to see that.
That's the thing. That's, I think, what we're trying to do is in the act of just asking this question to yourself.
Yeah.
And in the curiosity of whether or not we can change, that's the first step. It's not whether you can or not. That's not the point. It's like, to me, the point is becoming aware of who you are and why you operate the way you do. Like, that is like 99% of the world, I feel like, doesn't even ask themselves that question.
Yeah.
And I think that we could really benefit from asking ourselves these certain questions, because the ways that we interact in our daily life, how we respond to our children, how we respond to our partners, how we respond to our coworkers, a lot of that stuff might not have anything to do with outside of us. And it has everything to do with, you know, the little culture that we were raised in as a family. It has everything to do with the culture that we were raised in here in our country, in our communities, in our states, in our, for me, on teams, you know, like all of these little things all add up and matter. But do we ever give ourselves a space to wonder about ourselves? I mean, I used to wonder about myself and the universe and the world when I was a kid all the time, because I didn't have the complexities of responsibility and adulting. If we can get brave enough to ask ourselves some of these questions, what we have found in our experience is that some of our best friends, our wisest wayfinders, the contributors in this book, have traveled some of these roads also. And the loneliness factor, people don't ask themselves some of these really important questions because they think that they're messed up, or why would I don't have any answers. But the truth is, all of us have these questions, whether we want to admit that to ourselves or not. And so do so many people. And you're not alone. That I know for me, I was just, you know, for much of my life, just soldiering through and being a pro athlete, and I can figure everything out and I don't need anybody's help, and independent Abby. And my gosh, that's so lonely. Mm-hmm. So lonely.
I just want to fundamentally agree that I do think, I'm very certain we can change. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it is doable. And I do think it starts with what you just described, which is getting a sense of what your tendencies are. Glennon, yours is judgmentalism. That's probably an impersonal process, and ancient neuroses and historical patterns playing out in your mind that are the result of your family culture, your ancestry, the larger culture, and then you can work with it once you know what your tendencies are. Then they're more tractable, and like you said, it's like a 2% change, but that can really add up over time. And as I was listening to you talk about training your daughter to have a new reflex when mommy goes into judgment mode, this is a bit lighter, but I was thinking, I have an old friend, her name is Kayama. I like to tease Kayama, and every once in a while when I'm giving her a hard time, she'll just turn to me and say, "Are you okay? Do you need something right now?"
Wow.
Which I think is such a brilliant response, because of course that's what's going on. On this question of why am I like this, Abby, let me pick on you for a second, because you wrote something in the book that I had kind of a flush of embarrassment or shame, because I recognized my wife in this, in parts of this. She doesn't come from a large family, but you write, in large families like mine, it's hard for each kid to get the attention they need from their parents. I learned that I had to chase love to get it. So when I sought out relationships as an adult, I was attracted to people who were a little aloof and even a little bit mean. This was the part I found embarrassing. I recognized the feeling of the chase as love. So yeah, I just wondered if you'd hold forth a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in it. I'm the kind of person that, and I think this drives Glennon a little crazy, but I'm a kind of person that immediately trusts everyone and immediately like loves everybody until you give me a reason to maybe distrust you or not necessarily go down the love path with you. And it's taken me a long time. And I just thought that it made me a good person. Like this was my pathway into good personry. I know a little bit better now that, that's based out of like insecurity and a deep need of wanting to feel love and worthy of this world. I think that being in that I'm the youngest of 7 children, just it was really positive for my professional sports career because I got beat up as a kid. I was playing against older people my whole life. I learned how to be on a team. There was like so many awesome, beautiful ways in which my childhood really helped me. But as a sensitive person and a sensitive human being who then played this sport that armored me exteriorly, I found it really difficult to get into really good relationships with people because it was so fear-based rather than love-based. And I was calling love, but I don't think it was that when I was young. It was like a desperation. The amount of relationships that I squeezed to literal death because I was so afraid of space or letting go or any kind of independence. I mean, I know that a lot of us lesbians trickle into the codependent lane quite easily. You know, the second U-Haul date joke is true for many of us. I have had to get really honest with myself around the chase and love and what that really does mean, which has led me down the path of trying to figure out what it is I'm trying to prove and to whom. And I think that in the end, a lot of us are really trying to get the love and attention of our parents, you know, because of these parts in me, we do internal family systems in this house. Well, I'll speak for myself. There are parts to me that were probably really young, that were wounded, that I needed to protect. And I found ways to protect myself. And I have to get really in touch with these really young, sweet, loving parts that just wanted to be seen and loved without needing to do anything for it. And I've realized I've just been outsourcing so much of my self-esteem and self-love. In fact, I've only just gotten into relationship with myself around self-love recently. And it was the work through my grief of my brother's death. It was the, honest to God, the work of creating and developing this book, of like really asking these hard questions to myself. Like, why can I not love myself? What the hell is that about? And what is self-love? Like, what really does that come down to? I never have taken care of myself. I mean, there was this one moment that I've been working on this in my therapy with my therapist, and Glennon was, she was teasing me about something. I had ordered another thing on Amazon because my eyes are starting to get aged. And so I just keep ordering stuff to try to fix my face. I'm not going to do plastic surgery. I'm just not going to do that. But I do want to try everything else under the sun. I've lived outdoors, sun damage, right? And Glennon kind of teased me this one day about ordering another thing that might fix my face. And oftentimes what I would do to respond to that is I would say nothing. I would let it go deep and I would kind of process it myself and then maybe have a conversation with her about it another time. Or more commonly, I would say nothing. And then for the next 24 hours, I would search for all the other ways in which she shows me that she doesn't love me. And then I would explode. And then I would respond with a bigger explosion. But I got really brave in that moment. And I said, what did you mean? Like, what are you trying to get at here? What are you saying?
Basically, you're like, are you okay? Do you need something?
Exactly.
Like your friend.
I'm taking that. I'm using that. Are you okay?
And I was like, what is happening here? I'm not used to having to be accountable for the things that I say in this kitchen. Like, I was shook.
Yeah. I got back into my therapy session and we sat down and had a conversation, and it was so great because I got brave enough with myself. I respected myself enough to stand up for myself. This like base foundational layer of self-love. And I realized that it was like the first time in my life that I ever stuck up for myself, that I ever really stuck up for myself in the moment.
Wow.
And that was such a eye-opening experience for me that I was like, whoa. And then the respect that I felt for myself, and then the self-love that I felt for myself because this brave action. So I don't remember the actual question you asked because I went down like 17 different side tangents, but I hope that it answered
The chase.
the chase.
The chase. It's like attachment theory. It's whatever, I'm going to say it wrong. This is how I understand it. Whatever you were taught is love in your family is what you think is love later. So if you were taught, if your body and your mind and your heart were taught that love is, I'm the seventh kid, I have to chase down attention, I have to chase people who are literally walking away from me all the time, then you are later going to find people who are literally walking away from you all the time, and you are going to chase them because that's what your body understands as love. So when somebody says to you, I love you, like Abby thought I was delusional. Like for me to say to her, I love you, you're fine. Like, I'm good. I'm not going anywhere. It was like she had a version in her of that old comedian who was like, I don't want to be part of any club that'll have me. Like, you don't have good enough expectations. Like that. It was like she doubted my judgment.
Yeah.
And she still does every night. Would you say?
Every couple of days.
At least every couple of days she'll go, I cannot believe that you married me. To the point where like, should I be worried about this?
Yeah. Like self-fulfilling prophecy is happening for sure.
My wife and I went to this couples counselor, Michael Vincent Miller, who's really brilliant. And he had written a book many years ago, has a title now that sounds a little harsh, but he wrote it pre 9/11 and was called Intimate Terrorism. There was one passage in there that haunted me in the same way that the passage that started this portion of the conversation haunted me, where he talked about people who feel unworthy will often hook up with people who make them feel like they're taking a test all the time, that they're destined to fail.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I'm the aloof guy. I'm the, for my own childhood reasons, afraid of, he often talks about how like one side is often afraid of abandonment. The other is afraid of engulfment and,
Yep.
And so you guys recognize yourselves in that diagnosis.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
Yes.
although it sounds to me, Glennon, like you are actually making incredibly reassuring noises that I've only learned late in my life to be able to make, of like, you're good, you're safe, like I'm not going anywhere. And so it sounds like you're, I don't know, I'm comparing myself unfavorably to you.
Yeah. The first like 2 years of our relationship, anytime she would have a grievance with me, she learned that she would have to approach the conversation with, I love you. I am not going to leave you.
But can we talk about the dishwasher?
But
that's how
talk
every
about,
conversation had to go. I'm not going to leave you, but can we talk about the laundry? Like that is, and then after a while,
I started to believe you.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we're pretty much out of time, but it does land me back on the notion we established earlier, which is that it is possible to change. That's why we each do our shows and write our books, and because it is possible. But you need to be reminded and reawakened on the regular, even the people writing those books. So thank you for continuing to do everything you both do. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for having us.
Dan, you're the best.
You really are.
Right
Thank
back
you.
at you. Congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.